So I'm in the car, but I'm getting ready to start driving. But I needed to take a moment to just um, kind of talk. The sad reality of life right now with the pandemic and everything that's going on is that people really don't understand what you're going through when you have a chronic illness. Or sorry guys if you guys hear that, I have the thing on my GPS I just turned on. But if you have a chronic illness on top of depression, which probably is a result of the chronic illness, it's true that people really don't understand. And this has been one of the hardest times of my life. Going through sickness, my family going through sickness, being jobless, almost every stream of income I had coming in, not coming in, and almost too depending on somebody else for everything else. And I want you guys to know that it has caused me to have a strength inside me that I didn't know I had. Once you get through breaking down, once you get through crying, once you get through having going through depression, you got to get up. You got to get up because nobody else is going to do it for you. I thank God so much for my family, for people helping me, but even the people helping you get tired of helping you. You know, that's true. People get tired, and even when they have it to give to you for some kind of reason, they don't want to give it all to you, even if you pay it back. It's their money, it's their choice, and people do what they want to do. And I just thank God that that I have praying parents, that I have a praying family, because I noticed that at the lowest of times, the devil would send somebody your way, and it could just throw your whole equilibrium off. It could throw your whole day off. Everything that you did to talk yourself into getting up out the bed, every motivational speech that you gave yourself to hold on another day, someone will come along and say something, and it could push you right back in a pit of darkness. That's the thing with dealing with depression. That's the thing with dealing with chronic illnesses, and a lot of time what happens is, if you have a chronic illness, sometimes it could cause underlying things to happen, and you find yourself sick. You find yourself some days not feeling well. You don't even know why you're not feeling well. And then depression, also stress, causes a whole lot of it. And I've told you guys I have trimendral autonomous aphasia. I always say it wrong, but you could Google it. And so what happens is, stress will cause it sometimes to be triggered, and then when it gets to the point that my head is hurting so bad, then I begin to throw up, and then everything else seems, and it takes a while to get myself together after that. It takes a while to get my body back in sync, get in line. And some days when I want to get up, I just don't have the strength to get up. And I commend myself, because I do end up getting up. Sometimes I'm down a day, very rarely 2 days, but I get up. And for it to be the most painful acute disease in the world, I get up. Even after wondering how I get up, because when it causes the body to shock yourself, almost like an electrocution, and you wonder how you're still alive. Then with the same space, it's the jabbing, like somebody's stabbing that very spot with a knife, and so then it's the constant aching. It's horrific. But what happens is, when it get really, really bad, I can't see straight. I'm trying to get myself together. I don't know if it's more of like stress that's hurting me, because then I start throwing up, and then once you start throwing up, it's that energy that you don't have to give and then lately I've been having the panic attacks, because when this happens, I'm by myself. I'm usually by myself if no one is home, and that's quite a lot. So anyway, I got myself up and I took a little ride out to walk, and to stretch my legs, and to get some air. And I did the belt line, and I'm gonna do a little YouTube about that. But in the midst of that, I did find myself praying for one of the closest people in my life, and then I found myself trying to lift myself up from another conversation call and everything. But what I wanted to get on and do was to encourage somebody else and tell you guys that in this lifetime, that we live in right now, you got to learn how to pour into yourself and love yourself, because there will be moments like this in your life, and it may not be because of a chronic illness or sickness. It could be the loss of a family member. It could be job loss. It could be all sorts of things, and you find yourself by yourself, and and you don't know what to do. But you gotta look inside yourself deep. The Spirit of God dwells inside of you, and you gotta remember that all things are possible with God. Excuse me. You gotta remember that you have part of the great I am inside of you. Excuse me. His very Spirit inside of you that strengthens you when you're weak. So when you're weak, you have what we call reinforcement of the Holy Spirit of God Himself that can help us. And you gotta pour that thing forward, and you gotta get closer to God so that your strength can get up. Because if I'm not close to God and I'm not closer to God, I will lay there longer than I should lay there. I would cry a little longer than I should cry. I wouldn't know how to call on prayer warriors, my mom and my dad, and say, pray for me. I wouldn't have the grace and mercy over me. See, the having the Spirit of God inside of you makes all the difference. It makes all the difference, because it is a difference. I should say that, because if you don't know where to get your strength from, you don't know where or who to call on, you don't know what action plan to take when you have an emergency, then you're lost. And this is what life is. Life is a competition. Life is an emergency where if you don't have an action plan, then you'll just die. You'll die amongst everything that's going on in this world, all the terrible things. And you got to remember that being in God separates us from all this terrible stuff. It does not mean that we're not going to go through it, but it separates us. So as almost to have that, not just that enforcement, but that barrier around you that sets you aside, where someone who didn't know where to gather their strength and how to pray and how to be close to God can go through the things that I go through, that you go through being in God. It makes a difference. And so I feel so much better just, being able to talk and to vent and to encourage you guys, because of the simple fact of the matter is that I need you to beware of that. Sometimes people, good intentions don't always look like good intention if you don't have the eyes of God. And so for that person who's doing your best, that person who has tried everything, that person who have prayed till they're blue in the face and it seemed like God isn't moving, He's moving. Sometimes God, we don't understand why God does the things He does, but sometimes God is allowing you to lay there so that you can reflect on how far you've come and what you've done. Sometimes it's a lesson so that you can see what not to do again. Sometimes it's redirection so that you can understand what God is saying. And sometimes it's just that God needs to speak to you so that you can hear Him, and otherwise you wouldn't be able to hear Him in your busy place. So for me, it was God showing me that somebody needed to understand that when you're at your lowest, that's when Satan will come for you. He don't want you to get up. When you're doing your worst, that's when you'll realize that people don't owe you anything. When you are depressed and trying to hold on, that's when you realize what a lonely world it is. But above all that, that's when you'll realize the significance of having God in your life and how good God is. In the midst of all of that, everything that you're going through, you got to realize at that point, that's where your strength comes in. That's where the strength of God comes in. And He's faithful. And I know it's cliche, but I want you to understand that you're never by yourself. God is always by your side. God is always with you. And this experience that I've gone through has been a hard experience in my life, but I'm stronger now. and you will be stronger too. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I'm stronger now. I'm thankful. I see that life is exactly what you make it, and you just can't give up and die. You can't. And the more you procrastinate on doing the things you got to do, the longer it'll take you to get out that wilderness. You ride, sometimes alone so that God can show you that He is God. But sometimes you have to ride this thing alone so that you can see that God is God. You get what I'm saying? Like, so that you can see it, not for anybody else, but for you. So listen, that's my motivation to you. Do what you got to do till you can do better. And not only that, keep on pushing, keep on fighting. Mental health is real. It is real. And I thought for me depression was gone and I would never have to deal with it again, but it came back with a vengeance because I don't even be taking medicine, and that's the hardest part. We have a stigma when it comes to taking medicine for depression and things like that. But I also remember years ago when I was first diagnosed and I knew what was going on, I remember God speaking to me and telling me that depression is a lack of me. Like, if you get more of me, then you'll be okay. And that's exactly what happened, guys. Once I drew closer to God, once I got closer to God, I was able to overcome depression in a mighty, mighty way. And the only reason that I found myself dealing with it again is truthfully because I had strayed away from God. I didn't have my same routine of getting up and being still and getting with God like I did every day for years, and that began to affect me. Everything can be done through God, can be healed through God, can be helped through God, but we got to help ourselves as well. We got to be knowledgeable that we need to speak to people, that we may need a therapist, that we may need some medicine to help us. But for me, that's why you got to get with God. For me, God spoke to me and told me that's what it was for me. At that moment, it was the lack of relationship with Him that was hindering me and helping me with that, had me on depressed because I didn't have the roadmap. I didn't have an action plan. And so now that I have an action plan, and now I have a roadmap, and now that I'm closer to God, God is my roadmap. Because when I'm going through something, a lot of times I could go back to the Word of God, like every time, and God can lift me up. And and it's like, okay, think yourself through this thing. We gotta think yourself through this. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, that is it. And this is Dr. Michelle, and I just wanted to encourage you and give you that this morning. Peace.